You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. Tonight's story isn't from a hiker or a camper. It's from a Wisconsin outdoorsman who grew up running wild in the woods along the Tomorrow River. But one summer day, deep in the pines, Logan and his cousin found something they weren't supposed to find. A strange tree structure, crashing sounds in every direction, and a presence that chased them, fast, furious, and unseen, out of the forest like a freight train. This wasn't just a scare, this was something bigger. And years later, Logan's still trying to understand what happened out there and what continues to happen. So this is the story of Logan, the boy who was chased. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Logan today. Logan is an outdoorsman from Wisconsin, and he reached out to share some things that have been happening in his area to some relatives of his. So welcome to the show, Logan. How's it going today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing great. I don't get a lot of Wisconsin reports on the show, so I'm excited to talk to you tonight. You know, I'm going to go ahead and make sure you have the time that you need to share what's been going on there, Logan. So you're welcome to take it from here.
Okay, thank you. Well, first and foremost, I'd like to ask for any people that have had experiences in Wisconsin, definitely reach out to Jeremiah to share your experience. I definitely know I'm not the only one in Wisconsin that has had weird encounters that have been most likely Bigfoot, but it'd be very interesting to hear more stories from any of you people out there from Wisconsin. So I guess I'll start it off with my parents' encounter. So my dad used to live on a family farm, and him and my mom, when they were first starting dating, they would cruise around in his little old S10 pickup truck, and they would just cruise around the back roads and stuff. And my dad was really familiar with the area growing up there. The family farm from this area is probably only maybe 2 miles, 3 miles away. And if anyone out there is familiar with the Tomorrow River, it's pretty close to that area, which the area that has happened is public DNR, public hunting and fishing land. So anyone can go out there, and I've run into a few bow hunters when I've been out there. When I've been out there at night, I haven't run into anyone except for one time, and I'm pretty sure that they were looking for a deer. I believe it was October, and we were coming out there just to see if we could get any activity, and it looked like there was a couple of people that were probably tracking a deer in there. But to get to my parents' story, like I said, they were driving around the back roads and stuff, and down the road that they're driving, it's a dead-end road, and at the very end of the road is a property. I think it's a farm, but at the very end, there's a farm or someone that lives there. There's agriculture fields around the area, a lot of wildlife. Like I said, people go out there deer hunting, people fish the stream for trout, and there's also a private pond back there that the people used to, I'm not sure if they still do, but they used to stock the pond with trout. And there were some very big trout in that lake, probably some upwards of 20 inches. So definitely a good enough food source for something that's as big as a Bigfoot. So yeah, they're driving around, and well, all of a sudden something steps out. They said it was larger than an average human. And my mom swears that as soon as they saw it, it was like you blinked and it was gone. And from what I've heard of how fast these things can be and how quick they can be, um, and especially something larger than a human walking upright on two legs, There are black bear in the area, but you're not going to see a bear cross the road on two legs, and you're going to be able to see it for an extended period of time, not just a blink of the eye and it's gone. So I guess I'll move on to my personal encounter that I've had in the area. When me and my cousin were young, we were probably between the ages of, I want to say between 8 and 12 years old. I'm not sure exactly how old I was, but it's around the time frame of probably 2010. Um, me and my cousin and my other cousin. One cousin lives right on the Tomorrow River, so we used to do all sorts of trout fishing, and we were just country boys, so we'd mess around in the woods and do all sorts of stuff that a normal kid would. Nowadays, I mean, people are like, they do a lot with video games, and I mean, I got into that later, but when I was a kid around 10, we were always out in the woods, outside doing stuff. And this time, his dad had some bear bait left over. I think they were hunting bear up north, and they always get a bunch of bait and stuff to put out for the bears to see if they can bring one in. And he had some leftover stuff that he had to get rid of. And we knew that there had been bear in the area, very rare. My brothers had one bear encounter out there, but you don't really see them too often in central Wisconsin. So we were gonna go out there, and there was one part of the woods. Well, there's multiple parts of the woods that get pretty swampy, especially, like I said, it runs along the Tomorrow River. On the banks of the Tomorrow River, there's lots of parts where it's just like sludgy muck and stuff, and there's one part in the woods where it's very, very thick, swampy. I'm not sure what kind of pine tree it is, but maybe like a spruce or something. Lots of those types of trees, which makes it just like I said, it makes it very thick to walk around back there and stuff. And we went to go leave some of it out there, and I think we had one of his dad's trail cams that he put up. And yeah, we put it out, and we were kind of exploring the woods. And I remember we had jumped a few deer while we were back there. But yeah, we were walking around after we got done doing that stuff. I remember that it had rained while we were out there, but it wasn't like a real hard, crazy rain. It was kind of like one of those rains where it's sunny out and like rain just starts falling out of the sky, even though it's like bright blue skies and like maybe like a one cloud and just a little shower went through. And we're walking around back there, and we get to a part of the woods where it was kind of like, it was more of like a clearing, and there was one tree that kind of stood out amongst the rest, and there weren't really a lot of trees around this tree. And around the tree, there was kind of sticks and stuff stacked up against that tree, and it wasn't like anything crazy big like some of the stuff that you would see in like Washington or Oregon. It wasn't nearly as big as some of those things, some of those structures that you see out there. It definitely wasn't like something could use it as a shelter either, or even if it was a person camping out there, it's not like you could use it as a shelter. It was more or less maybe like 5 to 6, I wouldn't say logs, but like tree limbs kind of stacked up against this tree. And growing up, my dad and stuff, we always used to watch all like the paranormal TV shows, like Monster Quest was a big one that we always used to watch growing up. So I was familiar with what supposedly was a Bigfoot. So I jokingly said to my cousin, I was like, look, it's a Bigfoot structure. And pretty much as soon as I said that, so if we're looking at the structure, a little bit past where it's more dense vegetation, it sounded like I wouldn't say a tree fell down, but it was more so like if you took like a like a foot long log or a 2 foot long log and kind of just like threw it into brush. That's kind of what it sounded like. So we kind of just like freeze and we're kind of just, looking towards where the sound came. And we're not really sure what to make of it. So we're just, we're at this point, we're not really super spooked. We kind of just figured it was an animal or something that took off in the brush. So we're just looking around like this structure. And I do remember seeing that there was like old kind of like charred wood there, but it wasn't a lot to where like it was like someone had like a big campfire there. And it definitely wasn't recent. It seemed fairly old. So we kind of thought that was strange, especially because it's not like people camp out there. I'm not sure if people can camp out there. Like I said, it was public DNR, and it's for fishing and hunting. And people, I mean, I've taken hikes out there, but I've never, all my years of being out there, I've never seen someone camping out there. So I thought that was strange. And like I said, we're kind of just snooping around the area, seeing what's up because, I mean, it was just an unusual thing to see and not something you usually see in the woods. So we're looking around, and then kind of in from the direction that we came in, we kind of hear a similar sound to like something like getting thrown into the brush. So like one time, it could be just an animal going through. 2 times in a short span makes you kind of think that, something's still around you, especially because most animals, if they get into contact with a human, will take off, especially deer and stuff. And if you get in close proximity to a bear, it's going to make itself known somewhere or another. So now we're kind of just like wondering what's around us. So we look back to the direction that the noise was coming in from where we came in from. And then we look that direction. And then like the complete opposite direction, either to the left or right of us, we hear that noise again. So we turn and look that way. And then from the direction we're not looking, we hear, it's basically like we were kind of like surrounded. And we're just hearing stuff going like all around us. And we're looking back to the direction that we're coming in. We start backpedaling to where we came in from. And we're not really sure what to make of it. But yeah, we start backpedaling, and then we kind of start running because like the noises that we're hearing are getting louder and closer to us. So we turn around, we just start hauling it toward like out of the woods. And as we're running out, we're kind of going downhill. In the area, there's lots of ridges that get very, very steep. So it's pretty easy to lose your footing. So we're running like diagonally down this hill. And from the direction that all the tree structure and all those noises that we were hearing it around, it sounded like, it sounded like you let a bull loose out of the pen, and it's just like tearing after you. I've never had an experience like that in the woods. I've been bow hunting since I was like 12 or 13 years old. So I've been in the woods a long time, do a lot of hunting and fishing, do a lot of hiking and camping. I've never had anything chase me out of the woods like that. And whatever it was had to be of significant size because, you hear stories about people that are getting like paralleled out of the woods. You can hear like whatever's coming through the wood. It's just anything that's in its way is getting, it's getting demolished. There's no stopping this thing once it's coming after you. So we're hauling it down this hill. And I don't remember looking back. I think I remember, I looked back at least once. I don't remember seeing anything, or if I did see something, I mean, my mind mentally blocked it out. But I don't remember seeing what it was. And this thing, I mean, it's making so much noise coming through this brush. I mean, it's like, I remember one time my dad, he had an old Oliver tractor, and it was one with a bucket on it, and like the brakes were super shoddy on it. And one of the days he was coming downhill with the tractor. We used like an old manure spreader, and we used to throw logs in there to cut firewood, and we'd throw it in the back of there. And he's coming down this hill, and like the brakes lose all control on the tractor. I mean, that's what it sounded like coming down the hill. And me and my cousin, we're just running. I mean, eventually we get down to um, a more of a clearing, but not really a clearing. Just a spot in the woods where you can have like a little more eyesight and more range of seeing. Excuse me. And we get there, and we're like looking back to like where we're hearing all this stuff coming down from, and we don't see anything. Um, so we get out of the woods as quick as we can, and then we get back to where we came in from. There's kind of like a little old cement bridge that the water from the Tomorrow River flows under. And there's a couple like turnaround parking areas that you can park on, and we're at the first turnaround. That's where I can't remember if we drove bikes there or if we took our four-wheelers. We used to do a lot of crazy stuff, so we used to drive around on four-wheelers. My one cousin, he had like a flatbed boat that lived on the Tomorrow River, and we used to take that up the river like when we were like 12 years old. So we did a lot of stuff we probably shouldn't have. But that's where we ended up parking. And after you cross this bridge, it's more of a grassy field with pine trees. And it's the pine trees that they get so thick that like if you're in them, it like blocks out most of the sunlight. So it gets pretty dark in there. So there's like areas of those pine trees mixed in with like this field of grass. And most of the time the grass was probably like, at that age, it was probably up to our waist. But normally, like now I'm 6 foot, it probably comes up to like your mid thigh. But that's where we ran to out of the woods, and we get out of there, and I'm talking to my cousin. I was like, what was that? I was like, what just happened to us in there? And I believe he's a year younger than me. Because I graduated before him, so, and then I think he graduated next year, so probably about a year or two. So I was older than him, and I never had an experience in the woods like that. And it was just one of the craziest encounters I've had in the woods. I mean, since that has happened, I've never had an encounter in the woods where something's chased me out like that. And I mean, something was chasing us. I don't remember seeing what it was, but I mean, it was just one of the most crazy experiences I've had. And for any people out there that have had experience like that, you know, like the kind of fear that goes through you when you're an adult. So imagine being around 10, 12 years old and that happening to you. Do you have any questions about that encounter?
Absolutely. That is a really intense time that you just shared, and thank you for sharing that. How long did it take you guys to calm down after you finally got to a safe area?
I don't remember what we did after that had happened. I remember going home, and I immediately called my mom. And I want to say by the time we got home, it was probably 3 or 4 o'clock because my dad wasn't home yet. And my dad usually gets home around like 4:35. And at the time, my mom worked till 7, I think. And I was more close with my mom. So I immediately call my mom at work and I'm like hyperventilating on the phone, like telling her what just happened to us in the woods. And she's trying to calm me down. And I mean, like to this day, like I said, I'm a big hunter. I can't hunt over there. I've tried to go out there and hunt at night, or well, for bow hunting, like the best time to be out there, and where the most of the deer movement is like right before it starts getting dark. And my dad always told me, he's like, well, you got to sit till it's dark. Make sure that you're not spooking the deer out of the area. I can tell you right now, I don't do that. I can sit until it's dark enough to where I can't, uh, aim anymore. And as soon as that's happening, I'm getting out of the woods. Um, Not to mention have walk in the woods in the morning when it's dark out to get to the stand. I mean, I I can't, like, it's very hard for me to do. Luckily, I've convinced my fiance to come hunting with me now. So I'm not as scared, but once you know that there's something out there like that, it sticks with you.
Is this something that you and your cousins still discuss?
So I've asked my cousin multiple times what he thinks it was and if he remembers it happening. He remembers it happening. To this day, he just tells me he doesn't know what it was. Um, and I mean, I think he knows, like in his mind, probably what it was. Maybe just doesn't want to admit it. But um, I've asked him to if he knows because he knew the area more than I did. He was more country, let's say, than I was. So he knew the area better than me. And I've asked him multiple times if he remembers where that spot was, and he doesn't remember where it was. There's been logging out there done, so I'm not sure if it was in an area where logging is taking place. Because I mean, even when I was out there a few weeks ago, there was trees marked that were probably going to get taken out. But I think I mean I want to say that people have had experiences out there more than like maybe I have in that area, because I mean, like I said, I've seen people hunting out there, but it's usually far and few in between. Um, some parts of the woods, like I said, get really swampy and it's super thick, and uh, I mean, to get a deer out of those woods, especially because of DNR, they don't let you like drive four wheelers and stuff back there. To get a deer, like if you did get a deer out there, it would be a pain to get it out. But yeah, I mean, I've talked to him before, and he hasn't really given me anything concrete to what he thinks it could have been. He just tells me he doesn't know what it was.
So you kind of said something where, well, I'll ask this. So you grew up in that area and going
Yeah.
to school. Were there ever any stories passed around to like, don't go into that part of the woods, or be careful when you go over there? Anything like that you would hear growing up?
I mean, not really. I don't think, I mean, most of the kids at my school, I don't think even really knew of that area. I mean, it's out in the country, and to get to school, it was probably like, if I drove there, it was probably like 10-15 minute drive to get to school. And we lived out in the country. Like I said, it was, um, there's a old farmhouse where my dad grew up, and my parents' house where they live now is like probably a couple 100 feet down the road. And then my other cousin, he lives pretty much across the street from my parents' house. And then the other cousin, the third cousin, let's say, well, I'll say I'm the first cousin. He's my other cousin second, and then the third cousin lived by the Tomorrow River. So we always used to go over to the third cousin's house because he lived on the Tomorrow River. So that's where we always used to do all like the fun stuff. And like his parents didn't really like watch us too much, so we got away with doing some stuff we probably shouldn't have been doing. But no stories. No stories growing up. Like I said, my dad has had encounters out there. I've taken my two of my friends that I graduated high school with. I took them out there. I think it was last year or 2 years ago, and it was in the winter. And we go out there, and they're very skeptical. They're atheists, I think. I don't think like they believe in God or anything. They're very scientific. They don't believe in anything really until it's like proven by science. I took those two out there, and they used to heckle me, and I mean, some of my other friends still do heckle me, like believing in whatever this thing is. I mean, we really don't have like a great idea of what it's capable of, and like until we have a body, it's like who's to say how much we really know about them. But I took them out there, and they were kind of messing around, and we were doing tree knocks and stuff. And we weren't really getting any like responses or anything, so they were even giving me more crap. But I started doing like a whistle, kind of like a two-tone whistle. I'm not really good at whistling. I can do it sometimes, but other times not so much. I can try to do it. It was something kind of like it was something like that, but a lot more drawn out. Like, so you could tell like between the two tones, it was like one tone for a long time, and then switching over to that higher tone. And I did that, and I mean, you always hear stories of like don't whistle in the woods at night and stuff like that, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure you've heard that from other people. We did that, and we had something howl at us. And it was like we were talking about what we heard, and it was almost like a noise you would hear if you had your dog like locked outside and you weren't letting him in, and they do like this mournful, like long out howl. It was something like that. And as soon as we heard that, they both look at me like I'm not so crazy anymore. Like they had no idea what it was. Definitely wasn't an owl. And it definitely didn't sound canine. So I'm not really sure what to make of it, but we did have a response, somewhat of a response at least. And it definitely wasn't a coyote. Growing up out there, I mean, we hear coyotes all the time up at my parents' house. It wasn't a coyote. Definitely wasn't an owl. So, I mean, I'll leave the audience up to what they could think of that. And then I've also had two BFRO investigators come out to the site because I did submit my report to the Wisconsin BFRO. And I'm pretty good friends with the one guy and the other guy that he came out with. I met him once, but he seemed like a really nice guy. And we've been out there a few times. One time we just went out there hiking during the day to get him kind of like a better view of the place, since it was the first time of him coming out there. And the one structure, it was kind of like a broken, I'm not sure what tree it was, but I'm not sure what kind of tree it was, but you can tell it's very strange, and it looks like the limbs are kind of snapped off of it, and the top is snapped off. I mean, that, we were just walking around, I had never seen that before with him. We were just walking around the area, and I was telling him, I mean, you see weird structures in the area, and I hadn't seen that one before, and I pointed it out to him. I was like, stuff like that. And then he took a few pictures of it, and I took a few pictures of it, and that's one of the pictures. But one time, two of the BFRO guys, and my sister went out there. I believe it was the summer, maybe later spring. It was definitely warm enough because there was a lot of ticks out, and we were sitting on a tarp to try to get like not just so we're not sitting in the grass and with our camping chairs and stuff, so that ticks aren't crawling all over us. And then we had like a few of the candles that get rid of are supposed to get rid of mosquitoes. And we're getting to know each other better, just talking to each other, asking each other like what got you into doing like Bigfoot research, stuff like that. And we stayed out there probably till midnight. And around 11:30, very close to us, you can kind of hear like huffing. I guess you would call it huffing. It was something along the lines of like, oh, oh, oh. It was making noises like that. And going back to a previous time when just me and my sister and my brother went out there, we didn't have any activity. But as soon as we were going across this concrete bridge, the concrete bridge that I told you about in my encounter when I was a kid, we're leaving the area. It was nighttime. We're leaving. And we were kind of just like saying, like, we didn't have any activity, so we kind of just like, okay, we're leaving now. We're like saying bye. As soon as we stepped from the concrete back onto like the trail that leads to the main road, as soon as we step across that boundary, we hear one solid tree knock, probably within like 40, 50 yards from us. And going back to the story I was just saying, this is the same area where we're hearing like this huffing. And it's faint, but you can like hear it. It's like, oh, oh, oh. And like I kind of like me and the BFR guys, my sister were all chatting. And I kind of like shushed them. I was like, do you guys hear that? And we're hearing this huffing noise. So then we're just sitting there quietly, like listening to our surroundings. And we hear this scream. It literally, the best way I can describe it, if you've heard of like barn owls, they do like a scream screech type thing. If you ever heard anything like that, it was like that mixed with like a woman being murdered. And it was within 100 yards of us. And the noise came from, I had my back facing towards it, along with one of the BFRO members. And I mean, we were like kind of like talking, chit-chatting back and forth. As soon as we hear this scream, I mean, you could hear a pin drop. It got that quiet after that. I'm just like getting a little bit shaky just like reliving that, because I mean, it was literally like if a woman was being like stabbed.
Mm.
I mean, and it was loud. I mean, it was one of the most probably frightful things I've ever had happen in the woods. Especially considering that it was, getting close to midnight, and there was no other cars where we had parked, and there was no other vehicles down at the other turnaround either. There are a few houses scattered along the dead end road, but from where we heard this come from, I mean, it's all woods. There's no houses on the side that we heard this scream from. If you're going towards that noise that we heard, I mean, it's just more woods. And then, I mean, eventually you'll probably get to an agriculture field, and then maybe some houses past those ag fields. But I sent you kind of like a Google Earth picture of the area, just to show you how much woods was there. You can include that too if you want to on the video. just to give the audience like a better view of the place, I would say. Um, but yeah, shortly after that, probably within the hour, I think me and my sister ended up leaving. And the BFRO guys ended up leaving as well, mostly because like it was getting late. Me and my sister were getting pretty tired at that point, and I think I had something to do the next morning. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I had plans the next morning, so I had to wake up somewhat early and didn't want to be out till like 4 a.m. Um, and yeah, I mean, I could have those BFRO guys vouch for me that like I was like the only one. I was like maybe it was like some sort of owl screech, and they both looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, I've never heard an owl like that in the woods. And these are older gentlemen. They're retired, so they have a lot more free time to be in the woods than I do right now. I work full time, so I'm not in the woods as much as I was when I was a kid, but I still try to do a lot of bow hunting and my dad, that's how my dad raised us, was like we always used to do stuff out in the woods. My dad bales hay, he cuts wood, so that's what we grew up doing with him all the time. There's just, I mean, that area is just an epicenter for strange goings. Do you have any questions with that?
Yeah. So are those two investigators still looking into this area, or what was their final verdict on what you
Oh
had
yeah,
going on?
so usually when they come out, they usually ask me. So uh, the one dude or the first guy that like, he's the one that read my story that I submitted. So he did like, we had like an over the phone call talk about it. And then after that, we had planned kind of like a day trip hike around the area, which I told you about. And then I think he's been back there one time alone with, well, not alone, but with the other BFRO guy. I couldn't make it that day. Um, then we had the encounter with me, my sister, and the two BFRO gentlemen. And we're looking to plan another outing there. Um, I'm gonna see if he wants to come out again once it starts getting a little bit warmer out. Um, so maybe in May or June. I think in the summer is when most of the activity is ongoing. And the reason I say that is because my dad, well, so there's plenty of food sources for that area. Like I said, there's fish, plenty of game, like rabbits, squirrels, deer, turkeys, all sorts of stuff. But there's also a really good patch there for blackberry picking. And my dad, he jokingly calls it Squatch's patch. Um, and he's been out there a few times where he's had some strange stuff going on. Uh, one of the uh, one of the things that he's had happen to him out there was, well, I'll say this: my dad's not really, like, he's a no nonsense kind of guy, and he believes that this is, it exists. Like I said, they had that encounter, the road crossing. But he's a lot more brave than I am. Let's just put it that way. He's like he's in this big blackberry patch, and he's not afraid to get like scratched up by it. So he's pretty deep in this patch. And he said, all of a sudden, he said it just stunk, like the worst smell you can imagine. And he's just, like nonchalant, like he's picking berries, like, and he smells this, and he doesn't really make a big deal out of it. So he's still in the area picking berries, and he says that he just used something enormous, like tearing through these blackberry bushes away from him. So, potentially a bear, but the way he made it sound like, it, he just told me that it wasn't a normal encounter you'd have in the woods. I mean, he said, you got this just like horrendous smell. He didn't explain the smell to me of like what it smelled like. He just said that it stunk like the worst smell you can think of. And he said something just tears off out of these bushes. And I mean, he didn't like really tell me like what he did after that. I think he just stayed in the area picking blackberries until he got like a bucket full because he always picks like a bucket full each time he goes out. Try to usually get enough to make like a pie or something. Um, but yeah, he's a lot more brave than I am.
It sounds like such an interesting area for sure. Are there any things that happen in that area that are weird, but maybe not necessarily Bigfoot related?
Um, I mean, my dad's been like he goes in that area, like I said, to pick berries, and when he's been back there, he's had like trees fall over. So I mean, I guess that's like normal, but it's like how often does a tree come down? Um, for the person to hear it, right? And most of the times when he's out there, it's usually calm conditions. It's not super windy. So I guess that's kind of an oddity that has happened where I guess you could say that's Bigfoot behavior, or you could say it's just normal too. Um, Not at this area, but like I said, there's the farmhouse that's a couple miles away, and then pretty close that's where my parents' house is. And there's one spot that we call the marsh because it's all like swampy grass. And well, like the outskirts of it is swampy grass, like kind of stuff like that. Then there's a small pond. Well, two small ponds, one on each side of the property. And then we have agriculture fields. Well, yeah, two agriculture fields, one that's pretty big that we bale hay off of. And then one next to that's nowhere near as big, that we usually bale hay off of too. I think this year we might be planting corn there, but I'm not sure. But getting back to the story, my brother, when he was in his teens, him and one of his friends from high school, they were big country boys. I mean, it's a pretty common theme for the area. But they were picking night crawlers at night, and it was raining. So when it rains, all the night crawlers and stuff come out of the ground. They're crawling all over the roads and stuff. So they're out in the marsh, and we have a pathway that leads to all the agricultural fields and stuff. So they're like following this path, and the path kind of is an L shape. It goes straight, and then to the east, and then to the east is where like the one pond is. To the west is where the other pond is. So they're picking night crawlers along like this little dirt path that we have. And it's raining, a little bit of drizzle, this and that. And they have flashlights. I think it was headlamps actually, because they're using their hands to pick the night crawlers. So I think they had headlamps. And they ended up seeing like red glowing eyes in the marsh, kind of like by where the pond was. And they said that the eyes started off low, and they're just looking at it like all they see is the eye shine, right? Like, I mean, headlamps don't really make, they don't have much range to them, but they can make out like these red glowing eyes that probably like at the top of the swamp grass. and they're looking at it like, because I mean, how often do you see red glowing eyes, especially at night? I'm not sure of any animals that have like a red glow to their eye. I'm not sure, but they're looking at it, and these like the eyes slowly like rise up from like the top of the grass, and they bailed out of there as fast as they could back to I'm not sure if they had a vehicle. Like I said, all the like I said, the properties are pretty close to where my parents' house is, and that's where my brother was living at the time. He was still a teenager. So I'm not sure if they just walked down the road and were picking night crawlers and then they got to the marsh, or if they just, hauled out of there with a car or whatnot. But that's I mean, this is all within, 5 miles, 5 miles of everything. Which is why that I think that they've been close to my parents' house before. I like I said, I had that encounter when I was a kid. I used to have nightmares. I used to sleep in the basement. We have like a little, like kind of like one of those little basement windows that you can look out of. I used to have nightmares of like a Sasquatch like looking in because my bed, the back post would go like right up to like the window above it. I used to have nightmares all the time of like a Sasquatch looking in. And I'm pretty sure that had to do with the encounter from when I was a kid. Um, so he's had experiences out there. One time, when my mom, I think she woke up around like 2 or 3 in the morning, and she had to let the dogs out. And we live out in the country, but they have a pretty decent sized yard, where the dogs can do their business and stuff, and they know not to take off out of the yard or anything. And she lets the dog out, and she usually stands out there just to make sure that like nothing happens to the dog, or God forbid it did take off. She usually stands out there and like waits for him to come back and then goes back to bed. But she said from the direction of the marsh, she said that she heard like one really long, like long drawn out like whoop. Sorry, my voice kind of messed up there, but more or less a whoop come from the marsh, and that must have happened within two years. Um, and I think like sometimes I'm a little like nervous to go out there at night. So like usually if when my sister doesn't live in the area anymore, but usually if she's in town, I try to have her come out there with me. But I feel like these things, maybe like once you have like an encounter with them, you have more of a chance than like the average person to have an encounter, if that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard people say like that people that have had already an encounter, maybe they're like they can like tell somehow, like they're like marked or something, which is like a little woo for some people out there. But I mean, who knows, right? I mean, anything's really possible in this world. So until it's proven, it's like who's to say?
Yeah, I don't think anything should be discounted if it's see, here's the thing with the weird stuff. It's happening to a lot of people, right? And I think we're doing ourselves a disservice if we're discounting things that people are reporting. You know what I mean? Um,
Right.
even if it feels weird or it's not normal. Well, it's just not normal because you don't get it yet, or science doesn't understand it yet. But 20 years down the road,
Right.
maybe we will. Um, yeah,
I mean, like I said, there's just so much strange stuff that has happened in that area. And I'm sure as I get older and I continue to go out there, I've tried going out there by myself, and like I can walk around in like that field and stuff, and but even walking around in like that field, that's like right over that concrete bridge, I just feel uncomfortable. I mean, we've been out there a few times, like either me, my brother, and my sister, or me and my sister. And I mean, like you expect to hear animals and stuff out there, right? I mean, there's like sometimes when we go out there, it is like I say like it's deathly quiet. Like it's so quiet that it's like a ringing in your ears almost. It's just like it's one of the most um just weird areas that I've been in. And getting back to why I think that they've been near like my parents' property. Um, I've told you about the whoops that my mom had heard. One time when I was bow hunting, it was shortly after that, we had gone out. I mean, we had gone out squatching, and I mean, we've heard stuff, but sometimes it's so far off that you can't tell what it is. But I mean, it's some sort of vocalization. And I should probably invest in like some recording equipment. So like when we do go out there, I actually have the proof in the pudding, I guess, to put it that way. So I can like have more evidence to show for it. But I haven't really got the money to invest in a lot of stuff at the moment. Um, but yeah, we had gone squashing out there, and uh, I think like one of the next few days, I had gone bow hunting, and my brother's wife had gone bow hunting too. And I was on like we usually bow hunt behind my parents' house, and I was on kind of like the property line to the west, and then she was on like kind of the property line towards the east. And it's like just about, it's just about dark enough to where you can't really like, like you can't be shooting animals, like the shooting hours are done. So it's like about that time to leave and pack up. And, when I do go squatching, I usually feel a little like wary in the woods. But like in between us, we heard like one vocalization, and it sounded like a howl. And my brother had set up traps because he was trying to trap, I think, coyote, and he had set up traps, and it was just about dusk. So I'm like thinking like, oh, maybe, and it was like one of those foot traps that you bury in the ground, and like you put out bait, and then the animal comes in, and like once it steps on the pressure plate, it clamps down on their foot and holds them there until the person comes out there to get rid of them. It was one of those traps, so I'm thinking like, oh, maybe maybe a coyote steps in one of these traps. So I told him about it. I was like, we heard this weird howl, but I couldn't really tell what it was. I was like, maybe you got something in your trap. There was nothing in the trap, and none of the bait was missing. Um, so that was like one kind of strange encounter that I had. And like I said, my brother's wife was also bow hunting out there, and she heard it. And she was like, as soon as I heard that, she was like, I started walking a little bit faster to get out of the woods. Um, and that was like probably a day or two after I had been out squatching. Um, and I usually, if I'm out there, I usually say something like if we're intruding or something, on if we're intruding too close to you, just let it be known or something. And maybe that was that, but I mean, it could also just be coincidence, but it's just one of those things where so much strange stuff has happened over the years that you kind of just put it in a category of its own.
Does it feel like there's ever any sort of communication that happens between you and your relatives and whatever is out in the woods?
I it's hard to say like communication because like I haven't heard like sometimes people talk about like the samurai chatter. I was thinking about potentially doing like a gifting site out there. But I've also heard stories like to be pretty wary of it, especially if like you can't keep up with the gifting. And I live about like 45 minutes now away from my parents, so I don't want to like upset whatever's out there. Um, but if I do go out there squatching, I usually try to like go out there with like a good spirit, good energy, and like even if it's just like talking like to myself in my head, like, we're out here, we're just trying to see what's really going on out in the woods here. And we're not trying to come out here and like harass you or like cause any harm to you. Um and like I said, like I feel like if you do have an experience, you're more than likely gonna have another experience over someone that hasn't had an experience before like that in the woods. And maybe, it's like that because when you have an experience, that stuff exists out there. So what's to say, like you hear stories of like Dogman and Wisconsin, the Bray Road. That's like, well, so I should say that's one story I heard growing up was the Beast of Bray Road. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. I assume you probably
Yeah,
would be.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like once you know that there's stuff that like isn't known to science or shouldn't exist, right? It's like you have that open mindedness to be like, what else could be out there? I mean, even now, like the government is like talking about UFOs and stuff, and like UFOs like exist. I mean, they've had like all these different scientific projects in the government over the years, like trying to study these things. And I mean, like, there's so much different stuff out in the world to like, who's to say what's really out there?
Yeah, that's a conversation I've had internally and sometimes out loud on the show where you look at all these reports and even things I've experienced myself where it's like, you experience something out there and then is it, the way I look at it, is it that you're just aware of it so that you're experiencing things more, or is it maybe something is more aware of you since you are tuned into whatever's happening out there? Could be a few different
Right.
ways
And I
to look
mean,
at it.
yeah, I mean, it's like for someone that like doesn't believe or like refuses to believe, and they're out in the woods and they hear a strange noise, they just shrug it off and be like, well, that's, just an animal in the woods or some sort of animal making that noise, like nothing to worry about, right? Like, if you have an open mind in this, especially once you have like an encounter like I had when I was young, like, like, I mean, like I said, like, it's like I still get scared to go in the woods, especially when it's dark. Like, usually I don't bow hunt in the mornings, to go to the stand, but when gun season comes around in November, you have to be in your stand, before light. And, it gets nerve wracking. Even when you have a rifle, I mean, you hear stories about how big these things are, and like, people say like I've seen how big these things are, and the gun I was holding, I don't think could take it down or would, do enough damage to it before it got to me first, right? It's like it's just a lot of really weird stuff out there.
Logan, I think that there's going to be definitely more that you guys are experiencing. It feels like there's more to go. There's more to come. Definitely, keep me in the loop with if the BFRO guys go out again, or if you're just experiencing things, or your relatives are still. I'd love to hear about it. But would you ever want to have an experience out there where you have a visual sighting and actually see something?
It's a good question. I'm not really sure. Like, I mean, you hear like people that when they see these things, like they just lose control of their body. Like people like wet themselves and like get locked up, they can't move. Um, and I can still go in the woods, but if I saw something like that, depending on like how big it was, and because I mean, these things, I mean, you would have to assume are like somewhat human, right? Like they're obviously intelligent enough um, to stay hidden and be very elusive. And just like humans, they probably come in all different shapes and sizes. So if you see like one of the big males, like I'm not sure if I could be in the woods unless I had some form of weapon with me. And even people say like, even if they do have a weapon on them, like, you get locked up, like you're frozen in fear. In other words, like, I think if I did see one, I don't know what I would do. I mean, you know, I think, I'd like to say that I would try to continue to, learn more about them. But until you have, a visual sighting, it's like you don't really know how you would feel.
No, I definitely agree. I haven't had one either as well, but I think you're on the right track by having the right motivation and the right you've got the right intention when you're going out there as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next. But Logan, I want to make sure that you have also shared everything that you would like to share tonight, as well as we start to wind down our time together.
I think so. I think, that pretty much sums up most of the experience I've had. I don't think I left anything out. And I apologize to anyone out there, because I know I'm not like the most descriptive, or I'm not really great at telling stories, and I say a lot, so I apologize for that.
Oh, I don't think there's any need to apologize, dude. You did great. It's a very straightforward story. Thank you.
Yeah, and like without really seeing, without seeing what chased us out of the woods that day, I do think it was a family group, but definitely more than one, because the amount of like how fast those noises that we were hearing around us, it 100% could not have just been a single one. And who knows? I mean, they could have been also juvenile ones that were kind of like, let's scare these kids out of the woods or something. Maybe we're getting too close to something important to them. I mean, there's just so much out there that has been yet to, really be fully understood. So, but I think that does wrap it up for, the encounters and stuff I had.
Mm. Well, that's a great way to put it. There is much more out there to discover. But thank you so much for coming on the show, Logan. And hold on 1 minute. But thank you for coming on. Just wanted to take a minute to say thank you truly for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Logan's story reminds us why these encounters matter, not just for the mystery, but for how deeply they stay with the people who live through them. From the Tomorrow River to Squatch's Patch, this one was packed with eerie detail and raw emotion, and I'm grateful that Logan had the courage to share it. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel and ring the bell so you don't miss what's next. And share this one with a friend who's into Bigfoot, the Wisconsin woods, or just a good old-fashioned mystery. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you're following the show. And if you'd be willing to leave a review, it really helps other curious folks like yourself find us. And if you or someone you know has had an encounter, especially in Wisconsin, I want to hear your story. Please email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's chat. And don't forget, Sasquatch Summerfest is coming up July 11th through the 12th in Oak Ridge, Oregon at Green Waters Park. Bigfoot Society listeners can grab a 2-day pass for the price of one with discount code BFS at checkout. So get your tickets now at www.sasquatchsummerfest.com. And thanks again for being part of the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, trust your gut, stay curious, and never stop looking into the dark corners of the woods. And see you out there.